The morning sun rose over the plain like a bright door opening. The air was cool and long grass moved in easy waves. A thin silver line cut across the land, the new railroad straight and sure. Near a half-built trestle, a crew worked in steady rhythm. They lifted ties, set rails, and swung hammers in a pattern like a calm drum. A small engine puffed white breath that drifted into the blue. The land was wide and quiet. The men were used to empty distance and clear tasks. Nothing broke their focus until a figure stepped from the mesquite. A young Comanche woman, dusty from travel, walking with careful purpose. She paused on a low rise to look at the scene. Tools, timber, iron, and then took a slow, steady breath and approached. The foreman noticed her first. His name was Patrick O'Keefe, though most called him Pat. Gray touched his temples and the sun had shaped his face. He believed in simple rules. Set the line true, pay fair, keep your word. He put down his measuring stick and walked forward without rushing. The crew grew quiet and one man eased the engine's valve so voices could carry. The young woman kept a respectful distance, her eyes steady. When she spoke, her English was careful and mixed with a few sounds from her own language. She asked for help. She said she needed safety and a way to send word to family. In fear, she offered to do anything in return, even to be a wife if they would only keep her safe. Silence held for a long breath. The foreman lifted a hand, not to stop her, but to slow the moment. His voice was calm. He said no promise was needed here. Help worth giving, he added, is given freely. He shared his name and asked what she wished to be called. She offered a short name for strangers, keeping her full name as a private gift of her people. He nodded and accepted it without question. Around them, hammers stayed still. The men watched with open faces, not prying, simply ready to do the right work. A feeling moved through the crew like a soft wind. Respect, attention, and a sense that this day now carried more than rails. A Comanchero muleteer stepped closer with a canteen. He had traveled with the crew for months and knew many courtesies. He spoke Spanish and English and a few Comanche words learned with care. He greeted her gently and held out water. She took a small drink and closed the cap, then offered the canteen back with both hands in thanks. He smiled and said she could keep it. She smiled and returned it anyway, trusting there would be more when needed. A Kiowa scout, hired by the surveyors, stood on the berm above the work. He listened with the patience of someone who hears more than words, then stepped forward and said he could help with translation. He spoke enough Comanche to carry meaning clearly, and his tone was quiet and respectful. The crew made space as if opening a door. Someone spread a blanket under a cottonwood where shade lay like a cool hand. Someone else brought bread and a little dried fruit. She thanked each person with a nod and sat where she could see both the work and the horizon. She did not sleep. She watched and breathed until her fast breath slowed. The land felt large but not empty. The sounds of the track gang softened into a kind of music. The ring of iron, the single call of a bird, the hush of grass in the wind. The foreman moved through the work with steady care. Now and then he glanced toward the cottonwood and saw her posture ease. Her hands rest and her gaze grow less guarded. Calm settled over the place as if the day had widened to fit everyone in it. Around midday, the surveyor rode in with a leather tube of maps and an eager smile. He saw the traveler and removed his hat at once. With the scout's help, he explained he would ask the mission house in town to send a woman who spoke both English and Comanche well. The young woman listened and after a breath agreed. Before the surveyor left, the foreman wrote a short note to the army post. The words were plain. A traveler sought safe passage and help to reach family. He sealed the note and sent a writer with it. He did not want fuss, only a clear path. Paper cannot solve every need, he knew, but sometimes it opened gates when people chose fairness. He watched the rider disappear down the trail and felt the afternoon settle into a sure and patient pace. From the cottonwood shade, she studied the work with quiet interest. From far away, the rails had looked like a river that would not bend. Up close, she saw hands and care in every piece. Men measured the distance between rails as if guarding a promise. Two lifted a length of steel together, moving as one. A small gauge touched the iron to keep the line true. The engine breathed like a calm animal. She touched a rail with her fingertips and felt the sun's warmth and the metal's steady heart. It felt solid and clean. She thought of home and of names spoken under a wide sky. She thought of simple meals, shared stories, and songs learned by hearing them again and again. She thought of how people shape paths, and how paths in turn shape people. Late light slid across the field. A thin cloud drifted by and laid a moving patch of shade over the camp. The scout sat a short distance away, not too close, not far. After a minute, he asked if she wished to share more, only so he could help rightly. She spoke in simple words. She said she had left a place where it had grown hard to keep her own say over her days. She said the night wind carried the sound of the engine, and the sound felt like a chance. She followed it to the tracks step by step across open ground and gentle washes. The scout nodded and did not ask for more. He spoke of the mission house, a plain building with kind people and clean rooms. He spoke of messages carried with care and of friends who kept their word. The foreman returned with news that the surveyor had reached town. A woman from the mission would come by late afternoon, he said, and the post had acknowledged the note. The crew worked on, careful and unhurried. A small breeze moved sawdust in tiny spirals, and the scent of pine tar hung in the air. The muleteer checked his animals and, when he was done, brought the traveler a fresh cup of water. She accepted it and smiled a little more easily now. The hours felt full but not heavy. It was the kind of day that teaches by example, caution without fear, help without a price, and time given without counting. Near evening, the surveyor returned with a woman from the mission house. She rode side saddle and kept a shawl folded over one arm. Her greeting was respectful and warm. With the scout's help, she and the traveler spoke for a time. Now and then they smiled at the same moment, the way people do when meaning meets in the middle. The mission woman explained there was a clean room in town, that no promise or trade was needed, and that messages could be sent to find kin. The traveler listened, asked a few short questions, and then agreed. The foreman touched the brim of his hat. The crew, who had held a quiet circle around the scene, relaxed into soft talk and the last tasks of the day. They set out at an easy pace. The mission woman rode beside a small wagon that would carry the traveler. The scout went ahead to watch the way. The foreman stood until their shapes were small against the gold edge of the land. Then he turned back to the line, and the crew found their rhythm once more. Tap, set, strike. By nightfall, the camp was quiet. A bright star showed early, and the rails held a thin band of moonlight like a promise. In town, lamps glowed. A plain room waited with a clean bed and a chair by the window. A simple plan was in place. Rest tonight, send a message in the morning, then choose the next step. And as the first lamps were lit, it was clear that the day's true work was not only laying steel, but also protecting a person's right to choose her own path. The next day began clear and bright, as if the sky wanted to start fresh. The town was quiet at first light, and a soft wind moved the dust in small, gentle swirls. In the mission house, the young Comanche woman woke to the smell of warm bread and coffee. The room was plain, but it felt safe. A low chair sat by the window, and the glass held a glow from the rising sun. She sat for a moment and watched the street outside. She could see a store with a blue door and a boy sweeping the step with careful strokes. The world felt steady again, like a table that no longer wobbled. The mission woman knocked and stepped in with a smile. She had brought a folded shawl and a clean dress that would be easy to travel in. She spoke in a kind voice and asked how the young woman had slept. With the help of a simple mix of words, some English, a few Comanche phrases learned from friends, and kind hands to guide meaning, they understood each other well enough. The plan was simple. They would send messages, rest, and then choose the right way home. No one would push. No one would bargain. The choice would belong to the young woman. By mid-morning, the foreman, Patrick O'Keefe, walked from the depot to the mission house with a small envelope. He took off his hat at the door and asked if this was a good time. The mission woman welcomed him in. He had brought a letter from the army post and another from the railroad office. The first note said they would provide an escort to the edge of tribal land if it was wanted. The second note said the railroad would support any safe passage needed, since the crew had given their word. The young woman listened and nodded. She thanked him with a calm voice. He waved off thanks and said help had already been paid for, paid by the promise he had made to himself a long time ago, to be the kind of person he could respect. After lunch, the surveyor arrived with a simple map. He had marked water stops, quiet paths, and friendly ranches. The Kiowa scout stood beside him and added a few notes in pencil, where a creek crossed the trail and where shade could be found at noon. The young woman studied the map with care. It was strange to see land turned into lines and dots and names, but she liked how clear it made things. The scout pointed at a point of land where the earth rose gently, like a sleeping bison, and said there was a good vantage there. She smiled. He smiled back. In that brief exchange, two worlds met and found a shared language. Look, choose, go. The first message went out that afternoon. A local rider with a calm horse took the letter and set off at an easy pace. He was known for safe hands and a steady seat, and he treated messages like bright eggs, no bumps, no drops. The letter carried the short name the traveler had offered and a request for news of family. It also carried a simple truth. She was safe, she was well, and the choice of next steps would be hers. The rider tipped his hat and eased into the warm light, his figure growing small as he followed the curve of the road. The mission woman watched him go with the same feeling a gardener has when rain is on the way. The town passed the day in its usual rhythm. A blacksmith tapped a soft beat. A mother and child walked hand in hand to the store. Two dogs trotted down the far side of the street as if they had important business and were late for it. The young woman watched from the window, and little by little her shoulders dropped from her ears, and her breath grew easy again. She drank water, ate fruit, and rested. She thought of home, of a circle of faces around a small fire, of a song that always came after supper, and of her own name said with love. Near sunset, the railroad crew rolled in with the small engine to pick up supplies. When the foreman saw the mission house lamp lit, he stepped off the platform and crossed the road. He did not want to disturb her, only to send a quiet sign. "We remember you, and we keep our word." He left a bundle by the door, bread, tea, a new tin cup, and a note that said simply, "You are not in our debt." Then he returned to the platform and spoke with the station man about schedules and timber, and how the next day would go. Morning came warm and soft. A second message arrived. News had been carried along threads of friendship and family. Kin were on their way to meet her, guided by someone who knew both the town and the open land. They would arrive in a few days. The mission woman read the message, smiled wide, and passed it on. The young woman pressed the paper to her heart for a quiet moment, then asked to walk. They strolled down the side street where tall sunflowers leaned over a fence. The Kiowa scout joined them at a respectful distance. He carried no more than a small canteen and a calm way of moving that made the day feel safe. As they walked, townspeople nodded and she nodded back. It felt good to move in the light with no rush and no fear. That afternoon, two men rode in on the far side of town. They asked a few questions at the store. The boy with the broom told them as much as he would tell any stranger. Yes, a traveler had come. No, he did not know more. The weather was fair. The peaches were ripe. The road south was smooth. The men thanked him and rode on toward the depot. Their manner was not unkind, but it was not open either. They were looking for answers without offering any of their own. The stationman kept his answers short. He told them to speak with the sheriff if they had business. They did not. They simply rode a slow circle and then turned their horses toward the road out of town. The foreman, who was loading tools, saw this and felt the air change a little. He did not jump to fear. He simply sent a note to the mission house and to the sheriff that evening. The note said, "Visitors ask questions. Please be alert. All is calm." The sheriff, a steady person with kind eyes, read the note and walked the town at sunset. He tipped his hat to the mission woman and the young traveler and said, "You are welcome here." His voice was soft and sure. Sometimes safety is not a wall. Sometimes it is a person who stands in a doorway with a gentle smile and a clear spine. On the third morning, the train came through with a long, low whistle. Steam curled up and drifted away like a white ribbon. People waved from the platform. A child counted the cars out loud. The young woman stood a little back from the tracks. She watched the wheels roll and the rails shine, and she felt something shift inside. The fear she had carried seemed to slip off and fall away, like a heavy shawl in warm weather. She looked at the foreman across the way. He gave a small nod. She returned it. No more was needed. The two riders from the day before returned just after noon and slowed near the mission. They did not dismount. They asked polite questions in a firm voice. Had a traveler passed through? Did anyone need help? Were there papers to sign? The mission woman stepped outside. Her words were courteous, her posture straight. She said the traveler was resting and in good care. She said any choice would be the traveler's. She invited the men to speak with the sheriff if they had business. The Kiowa scout stood quietly nearby, his eyes on the horizon. Not the men. The street held its breath and then slowly let it out. The riders thanked her and moved along. Sometimes the right words, spoken calmly, can guide a day back onto a good track. By evening, the riders were gone for good. The town slid back into its normal song. The mission woman set a kettle to boil and laid out a simple supper: beans, sliced tomatoes, a heel of bread, a pinch of salt. The young woman ate with a good appetite and a quiet smile. After supper, she and the mission woman folded the shawl and set it by the door, ready for morning. There is a special kind of rest that comes after a day of almost trouble that turns gently into peace. The house held that kind of rest now. On the 5th day, kin arrived. They came slowly, not rushing, with hands open and eyes soft. The moment was simple and full. Names were spoken. A soft laugh rose and faded. A small happy cry began and turned at once into a hug. No one asked for a long story. No one demanded details. They gave thanks to the mission woman, the scout, and the foreman. The thanks were not grand. They were true and warm. The foreman, who happened to be checking a shipment list nearby, touched the brim of his hat, a little shy. He was never sure what to do with praise. He said what he always said: take what you need. The rest is yours to decide. They chose to wait one more day in town to rest and to send a closing message to the army post and the railroad office. The note said, "We are safe, we are together, and we are going home by our own path." The station man copied the message with care and sent it down the line. The mission woman packed a small bundle of food. The scout gave a simple map with gentle marks that only a friend would understand. The muleteer brought a fresh canteen and a quiet blessing in Spanish that meant, "May the road rise to meet you."